The following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Defion Productions podcast. I am your host, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin, Don. We're going to go a little bit early this week. Typically, we go at about 6:30. We're at 6:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you that don't know, we are filming from Western New York, specifically Niagara Falls, and we got blasted today with a snowstorm that's supposed to last until Wednesday. But the sun was out a little while ago before, darkness overtook our area. So we're going to get this thing going a little bit earlier today so I can get my producer home safely, so I can get home safely after this is done. But we're going to go through everything, the markets before then, get as much as we can pack in this hour, talk about what's been going on the last week. We had a price of Bitcoin this weekend around 95K. Actually flirting with close to 96. We are right now at 6:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, sitting at a price of 92,313. We're down about almost 3% in the last 24 hours. Still up 1.3% since we filmed last week. The total crypto market cap sitting at 3.13 trillion. Still above the 3 trillion total market cap, and the Fear and Greed Index sitting at 45. Going down the line, you're kind of seeing similar across the crypto spectrum. Ethereum down about 1%, XRP down about 1/3%, and everything else basically in the red. Many things outside of the top 10 are in the red for the past 7 days, outside of basically Bitcoin, Ethereum, and BNB, and Tron. Everything else in the top 10 of regular coins, not including stables, are red for the past 7 days. Everything down in the last 24 hours except for Monero, which is up to $628 in the past, up 1.36% in the past 7 days. So we'll get into some of our stories here. One of the main ones is, we got commodity prices hitting all-time highs almost on a daily basis. Silver, as of earlier today, was at $94.68 as U.S.-EU trade tensions escalate. Year-to-date up 33%. Silver has already hit 5 new all-time highs just in 2026, and we're only 19 days into the month. So silver is, it's kind of going parabolic. If you take a look at the chart going back to 2024, where the price was around $20, it's about 5x'd in the last couple of years. And it's about time, because silver hasn't done much for quite a while. Nice to see silver making a move. It's gold and silver are having their time. Bitcoin has done a lot the last decade, even the last 5 years, and silver and gold are playing the catch-up game. That's good for those holding commodities. Like I've said many times before in this podcast, my entrance into Bitcoin was through gold and silver. I was a silver bug, big silver bug for about 10 years before I found Bitcoin. So it's good to see at least a little bit of some catch-up with the silver trade. I'm going to show some videos today. I got a couple of videos that I want to show to kind of drive home some things. This one here was from earlier this morning on CNBC. It's in the lead of this podcast of one of the things that we're going to talk about here. So I'll play this CNBC clip, only 32 seconds long, talking about Walmart officially accepting Bitcoin via OnePay Cash.
Americans who use Walmart online or in person every week can now actually have crypto in the very same app. They can buy it, they can hold it, they can store it, they can trade it if they want. And then when they want to go pay for something, they can, turn it into cash and like we said, OnePay is actually integrated into the checkouts of Walmart. So it is, I think, a milestone in that case, Carl.
All right, Hugh.
So the gist of that is that Walmart has a OnePay app that you can pay with I'm not familiar. I don't, honestly, full disclosure, I don't shop at Walmart much. Not a huge fan. Used to go there a lot back in the day. Not so much anymore. I just don't like the vibe at Walmart, if I'm being totally honest, to why I don't shop there. But I do know that at least up until a couple of months ago, the last time I was there, they didn't have Apple. They don't even have Apple Pay there, which is odd. But they have this OnePay app, and apparently they've partnered with a crypto provider to now offer people to use their Bitcoin to pay at Walmart, which, it's a Bitcoin podcast where we talk about news. I think it's good in the form of payments and transactions, but Walmart wouldn't be the place that I would be going to spend some of my Bitcoin. That's just me personally. I'm not going to buy groceries, or I'm not going to buy whatever the hell it is that people go to Walmart for to buy with my Bitcoin. That being said, it's good for Walmart because these are the types of ways that these big organizations, big companies can accumulate Bitcoin on their balance sheet. If they're accepting Bitcoin as payment, they can put that directly to their balance sheet. But I'm going to guess, and this is just a guess, but it's probably accurate, that Walmart is using that OnePay, and they're going to immediately convert the Bitcoin that they get to fiat right to USD. And it's just a way for people that own Bitcoin and crypto to use it. And I don't think Walmart is probably going to do much of storing and accumulating it. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Do you shop at Walmart, Rich? Are you typically in Walmart to
I don't.
paying for things to
really
know like
don't
their payment
shop at
protocols?
Walmart or Target anymore. I've just kind of stopped using both of those stores. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what my question was. It doesn't sound. I don't think they're using it as like a way of acquiring Bitcoin. I think they're using it just as a transaction.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an immediate, or I think it's going to be just an immediate conversion to fiat. It's just it's a vessel for them to accept another payment form, and then just ultimately,
I just found it weird that they didn't take Apple Pay. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah. I know the last time I was there they didn't. I don't know if that's changed, but they didn't take Apple Pay when I was there a couple of months ago. The last time, I don't know.
I wonder if does that mean Sam's Club is the same thing?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's the same company.
Yeah, Sam Club's is owned
Sam's
by
Club,
the same.
obviously, remember in the old days didn't even take credit cards. They only had, remember they only had what they only took Discover or something. Now they take anything, but I'm just wondering if, and I'm not even sure if they take Apple Pay and stuff at Sam's Club. You're probably right. It's probably just credit cards.
Just credit cards or
check.
cash.
But
most of I know at Walmart, almost all of the self pays were like you had to use credit. You had to use a credit card. Right. There's very few, even, and I can even say like the around the corner grocery store that's on my street, Tops. Like if you go through the self pay, there's only one that accepts cash. The rest are just credit card.
Yep.
So if you have cash, like you got to wait for that
self
one.
Pays or self checkouts are only
credit card. No cash at all?
No cash at the Wegmans.
Oh, that's wild. That's just crazy.
I never go through that. I'm not like, I'm against self. Most of the time I have too many groceries to go through the self.
Same.
But I happened when I was there on Sunday morning, I had to pick up a couple things Saturday morning. And I went through that line just because there were so many people shopping before the football game. So I just happened to go through that one, and I saw a sign that said that they're just credit card only.
Yeah, it's crazy. Another video I'm going to show here. It's a short clip of 1 minute. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but we can revisit it because some of the other things I'm going to show and some of the other important people are going to speak. It's kind of goes into that conversation that we're going to have.
$1 million 1993 today is now $2,070,000. Inflation in 5 years will probably devalue half of everyone's money listening to this in their 401ks, IRAs, and their soft saving accounts. Right now, the world is a wreck, and their only solution to the devaluation is they're going to have to work harder. Over the last 20 years, 2002 to 2022, salaries have increased 27%, but the cost of a home has gone up 148%. In other words, our cost of living and lifestyles is not keeping up. Average person drives a $60,000 a year car that has a $50,000 a year salary with over $100,000 a student debt, 60% of America living check to check. We have a problem. And being busy is not the solution, and getting another job is not the solution. You have to graduate and develop more of the Gen Z millennial mind that says there's got to be a smarter way. It can't be the immigrant way of just work harder, because there is something to say for hard work. But if it's not smart enough hard work, then it's stupid work. It's dumb work. And there's a lot of financial idiots out there that have just not got.
Some very good points there
No,
he
that was
makes.
great.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are living in this timeline where we're told, especially from a certain generation, work harder. Like all your problems are solved if you just work harder, and that's obviously not a genuine solution. He threw the stats out there for you, like $1 million in 20 years ago is worth $2 million today, losing 50% of your buying power, while salaries have only gone up 27%. Driving $60,000 cars on $50,000 salaries, having 100K of student debt, like things just costing more and more money, not making enough in wages. We have a huge problem, and that's just some random dude talking on a podcast. So maybe people don't put a lot of stock into that. But somebody who does get a lot of respect in financial circles has really ramped up his rhetoric in regards to what he believes to be is an all-out currency collapse that we're about to face, which many Bitcoiners can identify with, because they, a lot of Bitcoiners believe that eventually the U.S. dollar is going to fail. And that's the kind of conversations that we have. So Ray Dalio is the guy that I'm referencing, billionaire, who's made a lot of really good videos that you can watch on YouTube in regards to just how our financial system works. This video here that I'm going to show, I think this one's 5 minutes long, and it kind of breaks down a couple of things. And then he's got another really short clip that kind of talks directly in regards to the currency collapse that he believes is coming. So let me fire this one up here. Let me fire this one up here. Let me go big the screen up, and then we can watch this, and then I'll show the next one after, and then we'll talk about both.
Most powerful empires over the last 500 years, and the last 3 reserve currencies. It took me through the rise and decline of the Dutch Empire and the guilder, the British Empire and the pound, the rise and early decline in the United States Empire and the dollar, and the decline and rise of the Chinese Empire and its currencies, as well as the rise and decline of the Spanish, German, French, Indian, Japanese, Russian, and Ottoman empires, along with their significant conflicts, as measured in this chart. To understand China's patterns better, I also studied the rise and fall of Chinese dynasties and their monies back to the year 600. Because looking at all these measures at once can be confusing, I'll focus on the 4 most important ones: the Dutch, British, US, and Chinese. You'll quickly notice the pattern. Now let's simplify the form a bit. As you can see, they transpired in overlapping cycles that lasted about 250 years, with 10 to 20-year transition periods between them. Typically, these transitions have been periods of great conflict because leading powers don't decline without a fight. So how am I measuring an empire's power? In this study, I used 8 metrics. Each country's measure of total power is derived by averaging them together. They are education, inventiveness and technology development, competitiveness in global markets, economic output, share of world trade, military strength, the power of their financial center for capital markets, and the strength of their currency as a reserve currency. Because these powers are measurable, we can see how strong each country is now, was in the past, and whether they're rising or declining. By examining the sequences from many countries, we can see how a typical cycle transpires. And because the wiggles can be confusing, we can simplify it a bit to focus on the pattern of cause-effect relationships that drive the rise and decline of a typical empire. As you can see, better education typically leads to increased innovation and technology development, and with a lag, the establishment of the currency as a reserve currency. You can also see that these forces then declined in a similar order, reinforcing each other's decline. Let's now look at the typical sequence of events going on inside a country that produces these rises and declines. In a nutshell, the big cycle typically begins after a major conflict, often a war, establishes the new leading power and the new world order. Because no one wants to challenge this power, a period of peace and prosperity typically follows. As people get used to this peace and prosperity, they increasingly bet on it continuing. They borrow money to do that, which eventually leads to a financial bubble. The empire's share of trade grows, and when most transactions are conducted in its currency, it becomes a reserve currency, which leads to even more borrowing. At the same time, this increased prosperity distributes wealth unevenly, so the wealth gap typically grows between the rich haves and the poor have-nots. Eventually, the financial bubble bursts, which leads to the printing of money and increased internal conflict between the rich and the poor, which leads to some form of revolution to redistribute wealth. This can happen peacefully or as a civil war. While the empire struggles with this internal conflict, its power diminishes relative to external rival powers on the rise. When a new rising power gets strong enough to compete with the dominant power that is having domestic breakdowns, external conflicts, most typically wars, take place. Out of these internal and external wars come new winners and losers. Then the winners get together to create the new world order, and the cycle begins again. I studied the holding indicators of when a fiat currency is going to decline and to collapse is when those who are holding its debt sell the debt, and the government, central bank, has to print money to buy that debt in large size while that's going down. Those are the most important indicators. So that you can see it, again, I want to repeat, selling the debt so that there's a big supply-demand imbalance, and the central bank having to come in there and buy the debt that no one else will buy in large quantity, so that then there's a currency devaluation. You have those three things aligned, the currency devaluation going down at the same time as those other two things are happening. And that's been a classic. It's like a bank run. They come to the bank, there's not enough money in the bank, and so they have to make up the difference by the printing of money.
So the last one, the caption, it's now happening. The existing fiat money order, the domestic political order, and the international geopolitical order are all breaking down. So we're at the brink of wars. And below he shares his signs of the coming currency collapse. So Dalio has been going pretty hard on what he sees as all these geopolitical tensions occurring across the world, coupled with what we're seeing in commodities, which we talked about at the outset of the podcast in regards to silver and gold prices moving, and just the belief that they're going to be printing more and more money, which we all have been saying for years, and the formula that's being and the recipes that are being put together are just not going to be good for the majority of not just U.S. citizens, just mankind in general. This is a global thing. This isn't just United States. This is a global problem because, good or bad, fortunate, unfortunately, the U.S. kind of like controls the game. Like what happens here has ripple effects everywhere. And these geopolitical games that we're playing is more about money and the repositioning of finances and the games that are being played behind the scenes than it is about, you know, Venezuela or Greenland or just having these pieces of land. Like these things that are happening, these battles that are being fought are boardroom battles more than they are being fought over necessarily just land. What were your thoughts on those videos, Rich? What do you?
The first videos were really well done, and it's very I based on my knowledge of history, it's very accurate. You know, we've talked about on the pod before about the rise of the British Empire, you know, and its decline, you know, and they're kind of still hanging on with influence because of their connection to the United States. But now you've got the United States, you know, kind of going in through their decline, and you got China rising now. You know, you had a little bubble there with Japan, like kind of a mini one, you know, for a little while there with when they were, you know, making radios and all that type of stuff, and that they didn't seem to manage it well, so they never really truly became an empire. But they had that little bubble where all that money and influence. So no, it's very well thought out, and especially when you get into the concept of the printing money and just devaluing of the currency, and that's something that I think we've all kind of, you know, paid attention to. You know, like, yeah, like there's no sign of them understanding in our government, even in our boardrooms, that they're cooked, you know, and they're trying to hang on to what they've got. And not really worrying about what's going to happen after they're gone. I think that's kind of what we're kind of up against. But I think that video was really good. Second video was very interesting too. But I think that first one was just so visually well thought out and wasn't about one country. It was about just countries in general, Denmark, you know, like all that stuff. So interesting. No, it was really good.
Yeah, I think you know, I think we have an administration, you know, say what you will about each individual or them as a whole. I think they understand what Ray Dalio was mapping out in that 5-minute clip and how world reserve currencies are both birthed and how they collapse. And I think we're seeing the final stages of an all-out attempt to save the U.S. dollar from losing current world reserve currency status and total collapse. I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's the Venezuela stuff, this Greenland stuff. Like it's not so much about, oh, we need Greenland because it's strategically positioned in such a way that you know, Russia, it's in between. Like, okay, we haven't done that stuff for the last 50 years, and we haven't had World War III happen yet. So the urgency is, I think, less about fear of being invaded or going to war with these countries than it is about the chessboard and the moves that we're making on the chessboard to try to keep dollar homogeny.
You know, I had a long conversation with my son about like Venezuelan oil, for example, because there's a report that came out that said basically, well, the thing about Venezuelan oil versus the oil that's in the Middle East, it is much more difficult to refine the Venezuelan oil. So yes, there's oil. There's these huge reserves. People think oil is oil. It's not all the same. It's based on the location and all kinds of the problems, the impurities and stuff. So to process this was what the report said, to process a barrel of Venezuelan oil is going to cost $80 a barrel. But oil is selling for $60 a barrel. So
Yeah.
Who's the company that's going to go in and spend all this infrastructure to take a loss? Like there's no company's going to do it. They can't be pressured into it because they just won't. You know, and then especially with the understanding that who knows what's going to happen under the next presidency, you know, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. And then the same thing with Greenland, which is annoying to me, is that we already had agreements to pretty much do whatever we wanted in Greenland, but we just didn't. It's not by name. We were 1/3 of the population of Greenland with the military presence we have in Greenland already. And he's kind of screwed that up. because now they're pretty much going to say, well, we don't want you here. And your rights to some of that mineral stuff, they're going to lose it. So they already had rights to the things. They already had agreements. And now I'm sure it's just like, screw you. And now you see Canada, you see Australia, you see these other countries are like, you know what? We're not really depending on the American dollar as the international reserve anymore. China's looking pretty good to us.
For my limited understanding of geopolitics, I don't claim to be studying geopolitics every single day and know it like the back of my hand, like I do with Bitcoin stuff. But from my understanding, we had a really good relationship with Denmark, and it was, from what I'm reading, one of the best that we had in the world. And some of the things that I'm seeing are like, if we are doing this to one of our greatest allies, what is the United States going to do to us? And I think that's what people are thinking on the global stage. And you're right too. Here's the other thing too. This is one of the reasons why presidents don't do what Trump's doing, like why this is like so brand new, is because most presidents realize and recognize that I'm only here for 4 years, or maybe at the very, very most 8 years. So all this stuff that I'm going to do and all this progress that we're going to make, it's going to be, it's not going to be like an overnight thing. Like there's going to be years of blood, sweat, tears, investments, all this stuff that's going to go into these types of situations. And that's why most presidents are like, you know what, is it really worth like spending all the, like, look at even Trump. We're almost at a year of Liberation Day. Like we're getting close to like 1 year of when he made that announcement of like the tariffs, and we still don't have a resolution. So a quarter of his presidency is going to be up, and we still don't even know if we haven't even gotten a decision yet to know if they're even constitutional. So you do all this effort and you make all these sweeping geopolitical changes just to have a new administration, a new ideology come in and change everything again anyways in a couple of years. So the point of that is like, we don't usually do that because it makes us look bad to our allies or our foes. It's like, what are we doing over there in the United States, especially being that the United States is kind of supposed to be a world leader, and people kind of look to us for direction. And at the very least, they look to our dollar for stability. And right now, more than ever, like there's no stability in the fact that maybe stability is the wrong term. Maybe it's like certainty. Like there's a lot of uncertainty. Like nobody really can tell you with any sense of like certainty of like what direction we're going to be going in many different ways. Geopolitically, our Fed, like we don't even know who our Fed president's going to be in the next couple of months. There's going to be a complete different ideology of our Fed, which seems like it's going to be very printer friendly and low interest rate friendly, and there's just a lot of worry. And I think that's the main reason why you see gold and silver performing the way that it is, because I don't think anybody knows what the hell is going to be happening in the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, those two commodities are probably the most stable, right? In the sense that
it's a mirror to what's going on.
Right. I mean, it goes back to a reminder of the 70s where everybody was buying silver and gold like crazy. I remember as a kid watching my dad, like seeing the value of the silver dollars collection that he had and how much it was worth, and he never sold it. And we still, to this day, we still have it, in storage someplace. And just because it's that one of those things, and you said it earlier in the show that silver is kind of having its turn now, like because people are looking at it, and it's a great commodity, and people are like, what else? What would I do here? Like, especially the first guy, that younger guy that you had on that was on that podcast, and him talking about like the younger generation is kind of seeing that
Gen Z,
the jig is up. They're much more savvy about geopolitical stuff. And you can say they're woke and they're eating their avocado toast or whatever you want to say, but they're much more aware of what's going on. They're educated because of social media, things like X, and they're paying attention to things, and they're seeing they understand that curve. They may not understand why the curve, but they can't understand like that generation that they've missed out on, the promise that they thought they were going to have, what their parents had. And they've done that research, and they're seeing it. They're seeing that it is, again, the choices. So, like, even like the thing the other day that I'm gonna give $500,000 to everybody in Greenland, blah blah blah, buy a vote. Like it's like, again, We know that that's not real money. That's just more printing. All it does is continue to devalue the currency. And meanwhile, you got people that can't afford groceries and all those kinds of things, and their college loans and their car loans and all this other stuff. And we're going to give $500,000 to people in another country. Like, that is, whether you like Trump or not, that takes away your faith in your country. And because they don't see enough people standing up against it. So it's not just about Trump. It's about, this government doesn't give a shit about me at all. Like, because there's nobody in the government that's defending me besides a few guys on the left or whatever, so it's a, that's going to accelerate that down curve of that graph that guy showed, in my mind.
I think Gen Z's asking questions that people have been either afraid or just status quo was not to ask. Like, we just didn't ask those type of questions.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
And I think that Gen Z is just like, why are we not doing X, Y, and Z? Like, why are we doing it this way? We've been doing it this way for 30 years or 40 years and it hasn't worked. Why don't we try to do it a different way? And I think, like, especially like looking at our politics, like, we're run, like, our president is an octogenarian. We have multiple octogenarians in positions of power in the Senate and in the House. Like, we're run by people that have been watching us do things the same way since the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we haven't really veered off that path. And I think Gen Z is just like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing these things this way? And especially being that they're being, they're coming up in a time of an alternative currency, digital, online, whether it be Bitcoin or the other shitcoin cryptos. Like, they're seeing a different monetary system rise. And they're like, why are we not doing it that way? Why is there all this pushback from these TradFi guys that want to keep doing, clearing houses that you got to wait 3 to 7 days before your stuff clears in a bank? And why are we using this old school Swift banking system? And, why are we using brick and mortar banks? Like, why?
It's what you're saying is like, when you think about it, when we were kids, there were the institutions, right, that you kind of thought about. Your family, the church, your government, things like that, right? And everybody's questioning all those institutions, whether it's your family, whether it's education. Should I go to college? Is it a scam? I question my government. I can't question my religion. There's so many questions that are being asked because of all of this. And it's interesting because, I probably have asked this question before. Do we have some sense of, like, taking the big people out of who we think own Bitcoin? When we think about regular surveys, the majority of people that own Bitcoin are probably younger, correct? Do we have some sense of that? Do we have some type of, like, research that, that 50% of Bitcoin is people owned under the age of 40? Or do we have any stats about that type of stuff?
Let's take a look and see what I don't know for 100% sure.
Because I feel like guys in my generation are probably less likely to be buying into Bitcoin because we think our 401k, is like, the end all, or our pension is going to last.
AI, when I put it in there, AI, Bitcoin ownership is highest among younger men, 18 to 49, particularly Gen Z and millennials, who are more likely to see it as an investment, though adoption is growing across ages, with millennials still dominant globally, but Gen X and older groups showing increases due to market maturation and diversification needs. Key patterns show young men lead, but women and older adults are increasing their presence, with general ownership concentrated in the 30 to 59 prime owning years. Let's see when I click the deeper dive with that, if it says anything.
And that's kind of like, I think, again, that answers that question of people that are disillusioned with all these institutions, our banks, our banking system, our collegiate system.
All right, so this is crypto, so this isn't specifically Bitcoin, but if we take a look at demographics overview of crypto adoption, 19% is owned by Gen Z, so 18 to 29. 30 to 34-year-olds, 32%, 45 to 59, 31, and 60 plus is 17. So I think what's kind of fascinating is that 18 to 29 and 60 plus are basically pretty much the same. I mean, a 2% difference.
Which is kind of what I was kind of speculating in my mind, that, older people they don't have new money coming in, so they're pretty much just staying with what they already have. But in general, the younger generation is looking for options, and in whether it's finance, whether it's careers, whatever it might be. And that's why I think you do see that young presence of men specifically that are really, really into Bitcoin. And obviously, they're on this X platform. You know,
Key insights: Gen Z shows the highest engagement, with over half, 51% of U.S. respondents in one survey reporting they currently own or have owned cryptocurrency. Millennials account for about 40% of global users and remain a dominant group. Ownership is significantly lower in older demographics, with very few crypto owners age 60 and over. Men are consistently more likely to own Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies than women across all age groups. Younger generations are, and this is what we're kind of talking about, which kind of drives home the point. Younger generations are also more likely to express comfort with investing in crypto assets and view them as a potential hedge against inflation. Yeah, so that that's a good question, Rich, and that's the stats seem to bear it. They're just, the younger generation is just, and that's good because the younger generation are going to be the future leaders. They're going to be the ones that are going to be, in the positions of power. They're going to be the heads of banks, or if there's even whatever finance looks like in that 15 to 20 year future. But they're going to be the heads of state. They're going to be senators. They're going to be congressmen. Hopefully we get a president that's not 80 years old the next time we do this voting stuff. Like, we've had since 2016 we've had 80 plus 70s to 80 plus guy. Like, I think we could use some new blood in that office.
Think back to our, Reagan was old.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bush Senior was old.
Yeah.
Clinton was young.
And Obama
Bush
was
Jr.
young.
was young. Obama was young. But now the last three.
You have to be what, 45?
We have 12 years of old guys. 12 years of old guys with some young people.
The law is born in the United States and age 45 or more,
yeah,
right?
34.
Is it 34?
I think it's 34.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure it's 34 to be precise.
I thought maybe that was for Congress. Let me see. How old?
No, Congress, you can be like 18. There is no limit for the age of Congress. Anybody can run for Congress as long as you could be in Congress and not being able to drink legally. I thought it was 34.
35. You're right.
Okay.
35.
In Congress, I think you can be any age as long as you're able to.
Natural born citizen, 35 years old, and have been a resident of the United States for 14 years.
Right. Yeah, because they have that in place for like the military types that maybe have never lived in the United States. Like you were born in Germany because your father,
but you're naturalized citizen.
Your father was an American, but your mother was a naturalized or whatever. But they want to make sure that you spend enough time and you've at least in your life.
I want to show another video. A legend, Milton Friedman, and this is from 1979. And those of you from mine and Rich's age demographic will remember the Phil Donahue Show. And this is a interview from 1979 on the Phil Donahue Show, where Milton Friedman talks specifically about greed, and I think it's a good conversation.
Did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, or where they have had capitalism and largely free trade, there is no alternative way of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system. But it seems.
Wow, that was great.
Yeah, he's exceptional when it comes to talking about financial, concepts and in terms and stuff like that. If we go to the caption of the post, 1979, Milton Friedman, mic drop on Phil Donahue's greed question, still crystal clear in 2026. Donahue, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on? Friedman, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? Do you think Russia doesn't run on greed? Do you think China doesn't run on greed? Both today are still relevant questions to ask, ironically. Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. Then the absolute killer. In the only cases in recorded history where the masses escaped from grinding poverty is where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. History is crystal clear. Free markets channeling self-interest lift people like nothing else. I mean, we talk a lot in this country where we think that, you know, how do we solve the wealth gap? And it's like, oh, well, let's make it more social. Like New York is basically New York City is basically trying this out in real time. Like they're trying to see if socialistic policies are going to work. Spoiler alert, it won't. They never do. Making things equitable for every single person where nobody can rise up above the other has never worked in history. It's just not like the people that will produce the most won't be incentivized to do so. And the people that have skill sets that are in lower end of the spectrum will never get the opportunity to ever get out of that because they won't be motivated to produce something that people need to uplift themselves and or their families and or their generations to do so. So I think like this idea that like greed is a bad thing, it's like greed is good. I mean, not to quote Gordon Gekko from...
That's what I was... You know, it's funny that you actually quoted Gordon before I could bring it up because we grew up in... You know, I grew up in the 80s. So I'm a little older than you. But that was kind of like one of those... If like, besides Where's the Beef and like...
But the paradoxical...
Down, that's one of those 80s quotes that everybody talks about all the time.
The paradoxical ideology of that is it wasn't meant to inspire. It was meant to shed a light on it being a bad thing.
But I think it ended up having I think Oliver Stone would tell you it ended up having the opposite effect.
I don't think that was the intended.
Sure. I think he was trying to shine the spotlight in Wall Street on that movie.
Yeah.
And it
backfired.
And it ended up people like, you know, he's kind of right. Like there was a lot of people. It's like the people. It's funny when you think about the people like Gekko and like Archie Bunker, who were supposed to be parodies or whatever, you know, like caricatures. Who many people like. I kind of agree with what he had to say. Like we've got a lot of people in history that were written to be like, you know, like making fun of something and or trying to shine a light on something, and ended up being like the spokesperson for those types of things.
Art imitates life.
Aren't smart enough, not educated enough to understand the message that's being shown on them.
Art imitates life.
Yep.
One more video I'm going to show. This will be the last video I show. This is a oldie but goodie. It just drives everything back home, reinforces the fraudulent Fugazi system that we operate in. This is in the UK Parliament, and this is a guy that was speaking in regards to the banking system. And it's only 59 seconds. I've showed it before, but it's always good to come back and revisit.
All the banks are broke. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks do it all the time. Central banks repress the amount of interest that rates are, so we don't have the real cost of them. And plus, underneath all this, we talk loosely, in a rather cavalier fashion, do we not, about deposit guarantees. So when banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
And that's in the UK. That's not even the central bank that's controlling everything, which would be over here in the United States of America. Yeah, I mean, I've beat that drum many, many, many times, and it's always amazing and fascinating to me how many people walking around have absolutely no idea what fractional reserve banking is or how our banking system works, or the fact that money is created out of thin air. Like people just don't have any idea, which is why it works. You know, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. And that's, you know, the devil is our central banks. I'll end with these two posts here. This one here I want to read because this comes back to financial literacy, which is one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about. and I wanna share this post because it drives the point home of our lack of financial literacy. And this is just a random example. I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's made up. It could be true. I'm not really sure, but I'll read through it, and it just drives the point home. Edwin won $2 million after taxes in the lottery. 34 years old, warehouse worker making $48,000 a year. Week 1, bought his mom a $250,000 house, bought himself a $50,000 truck, quit his job. Week 6, $395K gone. Week 8, he called us in a panic. The lottery curse is real. 70% of winners go broke within 5 years. We had to stop the bleeding fast. The emergency brake. Remaining $1.615 million. We split it into 3 buckets. $100K checking for living expenses, $515K moderate conservative investments, $1 million growth portfolio. His cousin wanted $50K for a restaurant. Nope. His brother needed $30K. Not happening. The reality check. $2 million sounds like never work again money. At 34, living off it for 50 plus years, $2 million divided by 50 years equals $40K a year. Less than his warehouse job if he sat in cash uninvested. Path A, keep spending, broke by 42. Path B, protect it, retire at 52 with millions. He picked B, the hard boundary. We set up one family meeting. Edward, I bought mom a house. That's my gift. The rest isn't available. They were mad. He held the line anyway. The plan. Edwin went back to work part-time, $32K a year. Why? Health insurance. Structure. As a bonus, he would get Social Security credits. The lesson? 70% of lottery winners go broke within 5 years. Big inheritances? Same story. Average 100K plus inheritance is gone in 5 years. Why? People treat windfalls like income instead of capital, which I thought was, that last part was just so powerful, and I wanted to read through the whole thing so it drives the point home. And that's, you see that with professional athletes. Like professional athletes, you know, they it's a windfall when you're in your 20s and 30s and you're making gobs of money. It's not gonna keep happening. If you're living until 70 or 80 years old, your best working years could be like 40 or 50 years behind you by the time you're, you know, at the end of the line. Like there's a lot that goes into, you know, these stories. I mean, there was a whole documentary on ESPN, 30 for 30 was called Broke, of all these athletes, big name people that just fired through tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're just like, you know, how does that happen? And even accounting for, you know, taxation, when you say, okay, somebody made $100 million in a career, you can probably, depending on locality, chalk up 50 million of that, you know, being spent in some form of taxation, but you still got 50 million left. And if you know, allocate that correctly, that's generational wealth. That's money that just, you know, can set yourself and your generation, your people up for generations.
Nice comment from
yeah.
someone. Yeah.
Cool. My eyesight is absolutely terrible.
Pet Peralta fan. He
Okay.
just say cool show.
Oh, thanks.
Greed is one of the deadly sins, and great point. You got 3 comments, so thank you for
yeah, absolutely. Appreciate checking out the podcast and commenting. Comments are definitely always appreciated.
You know, it's funny because people, like, when they get that windfall,
Yeah.
like, you know, it's too much money and they don't understand, like,
It can be
they
intoxicating.
they don't even understand, like, just do basic math. You know, let's say you're making $50,000 and you get $2 million. You know, like, like you said, you buy the truck, you buy the mom the house, you lend your brother the money, which you're never going to see again, all that type of stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I'm going to run out of money by the time I'm 60, let's say, depending on, like, in 20 years or whatever it might be. You know, I guess maybe if you invested, but everybody does that thing where they quit their job. And, like, the guy, like, this thing was great because not only did it talk about, like, the healthcare, which they didn't think about, they didn't, you know, the person didn't think about healthcare, but also just the structure. And you and I have talked about, you know, in other circles, about the people that don't have anything to do often die quite quickly because they just stop functioning correctly. So, you know, you got to have something. And yeah, that money, you can go through that money so quickly, especially with a poor investment. You know, you do something stupid, you lose 10% or 20%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just do something. Yeah, like that's a really great post, by the way. That really was cool.
We'll end the podcast with this post here. This whole podcast was kind of a setup for this ending post because it's really important. And this is what I tell people all the time when we have conversations about Bitcoin. It says study Bitcoin, in quotations, doesn't just mean study the protocol itself. It means study the history of money and pinpoint each way society has had their money captured and centralized. Only then can you understand the reason that Bitcoin even exists. After thousands of years, it's finally money that cannot be captured. And that's the point to drive home. You can't just tell people, like we often do all across social media, and I've been guilty of doing it myself, study Bitcoin. Like, you just say that. Like, people actually have to study the history of money and then pinpoint how society has had their money captured and centralized. The centralization and the capture of money is super important. And then once you understand that, then you start to understand why something like Bitcoin was created in the first place and why it exists. Once you put those two things together, then you understand why Bitcoin. Then you can answer that question. If you on your own can't answer the why Bitcoin question, you're never going to truly understand or own this asset for the long term. So studying Bitcoin doesn't mean just studying Bitcoin. You have to study the history of money and then make your way to Bitcoin to understand the why. Because the why is what will have you be one of these psychopath holders that hold it for long periods of time and become generationally wealthy, which is the point. As always, if you're watching this locally in the Western New York area, be safe out there with this crazy weather that we're going through. We'll be back next week. Don't trust, verify. Thanks for watching. Peace.